Hey, how's it going? Man, it's been a while. Kind of stuttering because I haven't done a live stream in quite some time, but glad to be live. Let me know if you're here hanging out. Say hello in the comments. Today, we're going to be talking about setting up your YouTube podcast. As you guys know, I have a podcast, and I saw this come up that now YouTube, I know that YouTube was and is really investing into podcasts and really trying to be a platform, a go-to platform for podcasts. And it's now available on my channel. And so I thought I would do it, and I thought I would share with you guys live as I set this up on my channel. And you can see how easy it is to set up. All right. So if you're here, hello, welcome. If you are been here before, you're watching the channel, the content, glad to have you here. Glad to see you live. Hopefully, if we catch each other live here today, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is a channel all about content creators. Really, I interview content creators. I have a podcast that's on here. I have tutorials that's on here, live streams as well, and as well as vlogs as well. When I travel for conferences and things like that, you'll see some shorts of my family and stuff like that. Some behind the scenes stuff as well. So hopefully you enjoy your time here and the content that's here, and hopefully you learn something as well and take away something that you can apply to your own content business, whatever that may look like. All right, and let me know in the comments. Say hello in the comments. Really love to connect with you. And you can find my Instagram and LinkedIn profile and everything in the banner as well, or in the descriptions. All right, so let's connect. Let's have a conversation, not just you consuming the content here. All right, I want to make sure that we can connect, and that you are also taking action with the things that you're learning from this channel. All right, so let me share my screen, and let's jump into this setup process for your YouTube podcast. Whether or not you have a podcast, if you have a podcast already, great. If you don't, you can set it up here as well if it's available to you. All right, so let me share my screen here. This view is going to be better. So I got Rich here, Rich Cardona, who's a buddy of mine. He's actually, I just want to kind of give him a shout out because he's the one that actually tipped me off that YouTube podcast is now a thing. And so, Rich, if you're catching this, thank you, my man. Glad that you did that story. I think it was an Instagram story earlier today. And you're talking about how now YouTube podcast is available. And so I checked it out, and it was available on my account. All right. So the first thing here I want to show you is, if you are looking to set up your YouTube podcast, there's a really helpful article here. This is basically the guide directly from YouTube on how to set up your YouTube podcast. Really, really easy. So I will link this in the description, as well as the chat. And that way you have access to this, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. Okay, so I want to make sure I put that up there for you in the chat now, um, and I'm going to put that in the chat here, and we're going to pin it so that you have access to that as well. All right, so pin message right there. Perfect. Okay, so now here's my podcast. Okay, so I have a podcast. It's on Spotify. It's on all the platforms and everything. It's really easy to find. It's all there. And so what we're going to do is it's not going to replace YouTube podcast. Not going to replace Anchor or Spotify or Buzzsprout, I believe. Any of these platforms, if you already have an existing podcast, it's just going to this will just allow you to have a podcast that people can consume audio only and things like that on your YouTube channel. All right, so it's another dimension of your YouTube channel that you can now offer your podcast directly to YouTube consumers, YouTube viewers, your people on YouTube. All right, YouTube listeners now. All right, and so again, distribution is key here, right? As a content creator, distribution is something that you really need to be well versed in, and this is just another distribution platform for your podcast. It's not going to replace your existing one. It's going to add to your already existing podcast distribution channels. All right, so don't be afraid. It's not going to replace that. It's not going to take away from your existing podcast. This will just add an additional distribution channel for your podcast. So if you are doing brand deals, sponsorships, if you're just looking to grow your audience and your reach to target your to reach your target audience, your target customers, this is just another platform to allow you to do that. All right, so let's do that on my channel. So here is my channel. I'm starting from the playlist tab, you can see that this is the playlist tab right here. Okay. We're going to end up here eventually anyway, because my scenario, there's two scenarios here. One scenario is where you don't have a podcast and you can start a fresh new podcast. Another scenario is if you've already been uploading your podcast episodes, your video podcast episodes to YouTube, then you can turn that playlist into a podcast. And I'll show you what that means in just a second. That's the scenario that I'm in because I have this playlist, as you can see here, the Coffee with Creators podcast already set up. And so we're going to turn this into a podcast. Okay. So where we're going to begin though is up here on the create button on the top right. Okay. You see create. Make sure that you can see that. I think you can. Okay, great. See a couple people here. So let me know if you're watching this live. Good to see you. Okay, so we're going to go to create. And so if you click on create now, you'll see now that there is this additional, can't really zoom in too much, but you'll see now that there's an additional thing here, another option that says new podcast. Okay. Let me know if you saw that. Let me know if you can see that. It's really, really clear. New podcast. Okay. Let me know if you have that as well. Okay. It might just be US or Canada only. I'm in Canada. My YouTube channel is clearly in Canada. That's, in the settings and everything, it's clearly Canada. Hey, good to see you. Sound Bath Meditation Online. Love the name. Got to check out the channel though. One really curious what kind of content you've got there. That's very cool. Good to see you here. I don't think I've ever seen you on my channel before, although I haven't live streamed before, so I haven't really seen many of the new subscribers before. So good to see you here, Sound Bath. Let me know what your content is about and if you have the podcast option on your channel already. Okay. So once you do that, so you get to create and you see new podcast. Okay. I'm going to click on new podcast. I'm actually going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see it. Okay, so there it is. That's better. So see new podcast right here. Okay. So let's click on new podcast. I'm going to zoom out. Okay, so you got two options. Like I said, you got two options. One is to create a new podcast. Okay. And the other is to set an existing playlist as a podcast. Okay. And that's where I am at. This is me right here. Okay. And so 3 steps. Go to your content playlist. Okay, hover over the playlist you want to set as a podcast, and then click the little hamburger icon thing, and then click set as podcast. Okay, very, very straightforward. So we're going to follow that. I'm going to remember that. We're going to remember these 3 steps, very straightforward, and we're going to do that for my channel here. All right, so we're going to zoom out because this is way too zoomed in. Okay, so we're going to go with this podcast. This is the playlist that we want to turn into a podcast. Okay, very simple. And so we're going to hover over it and we're going to click on this options button. And now you're going to see that there is a set as podcast option, set as podcast. Let's zoom out again. Okay, so this is the field that you see. See, really 3 simple things here. Okay, there we go. Saw your comment there, Soundbath. I'm going to be right there in 2 seconds. I'm just going to finish this thought here, this step. Okay, so there's really 3 things here. First, you got to name it. You got to put a title. You got to put a name to your podcast. This is required. Okay, so mine is Coffee with Creators Podcast. I'm going to add by Rob Balasabas. Okay, just so people know who the host is. You're going to need a description. So I'm just going to take this. I may change this later. I'm just going to take the description from my Spotify account. Okay. Going to take this description here, copy that, and we're going to paste it into this. And you've got up to 5,000 characters that you can put in here, so you can go real deep into this. Okay, you can be really, really descriptive with your description for your podcast. Okay, you may want to even sprinkle in some keywords and things like that because it is YouTube, so discoverability is important. And so you can put in some keywords there that you want people to find you in organically, right? And discover you. Okay. You want to put the visibility. Of course, you want to make this a public podcast. I'm sure that there's use cases for making it a private podcast, but for this purpose, this podcast is public. Okay. And then there's also a podcast thumbnail that's required. Okay. It's a square picture that represents your podcast. And so I'm going to use the same one that I use for my podcast everywhere else, this design right here. Okay. All right. So we're going to use that. So we're going to go back to this. All right, let me see. Make sure that you can see this. Okay, so yeah, I think you can see it on the screen here. So we're gonna put in this picture. I know where that is, right here. There we go. And so it is uploading. There it is. All right. So hopefully you can see that. There. Yeah, you can see that right there. So now we've got our picture here. We're set there. We've got our podcast visibility to public right here. We're good there as well. We've got our description and we've got our title. Okay. We've got all the things that we need for this podcast now. So we're going to click on done. All right. Very straightforward. Click on done. It's going to make me wait. It's processing. There it is, successfully set as a podcast. So that's very cool. And so actually, I'm seeing this for the first time myself. So now this has this little podcast icon here. You can kind of see. I'll try and zoom into that. There it is. You can kind of see that this playlist has a new thumbnail, right? It's got a different thumbnail, and it's also got that sort of, broadcasting type icon here for that playlist, which is very cool. And also, I'm going to move this guy out of the way. And now we've got this new tab that says podcast. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so let's zoom out and let's see how this looks. And I'll get into the comments there in just a second. If I click on podcast, I see that it is here. Very cool. We'll take a look at some of the analytics and everything. Let's look at the videos. Okay, so it shows the videos there. You can show the analytics of this podcast. Obviously, we don't have that much yet. There's not that much happening here yet, but very interesting. It's got its own set of analytics, podcast analytics here. I'm earning $1.34 on that. Amazing. But it says podcast analytics. Very good. Very helpful. I will deep dive into this in another video, but this is just good to see. Great. So now we're going to go back here, and then we can also watch this on YouTube. So let's see what that looks like. So there it is. Okay, we've got an ad. It's basically a playlist, right? Basically a playlist. And so now we've got this. Okay, and we've got a playlist on the side when people are consuming this. Now, I'll have to do another video where it shows how this actually looks on mobile and all of that. But this is actually really interesting to kind of see how this now looks. And so there it is. That podcast is launched on YouTube. We officially have a YouTube podcast, and there we go. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're watching this on replay, of course, let me know if you have any questions. We'll make some new videos and videos in the future here to answer any of those questions that you may have. There's a comment here from Sound Bath Meditation Online. It says, mine popped up about a week ago. I just turned one of my playlists into a podcast. Really excited to watch this feature unfold. Yeah. Likewise. Really, really interesting. How YouTube is shifting into this direction, right? I mean, it makes so much sense, right? And there's so many video podcasts. I know a lot of YouTube creators that are traditionally video first creators launched podcasts very recently in the last couple of years, and they wanted to create more long form content and really deep dive into different topics. And they launched those podcasts. Yes, they uploaded them to YouTube as video podcasts, but they really, had to leverage existing podcast platforms like Spotify and things like that, which then those platforms like Spotify, Anchor, I guess, which was renamed as Spotify as podcast, something like Spotify for podcasters, has a video component. So you can upload your videos directly to Spotify and people can watch that. So, there's that gap in the market for video creators that have podcasts. And so now that they've done this with YouTube and YouTube has launched a podcast feature, I love it. I'm all about it. I'm really all about it. So makes it a lot easier for me to distribute my podcast episodes and actually have it as a podcast, and people can listen to it audio only. Okay, so let's go into some of the FAQs here. We're going to get into this. So just really quick, as we wrap this video up, podcast creators are eligible for these perks, right? Podcast specific discovery and recommendation features, right? Make it easier for your audience to find your podcast. Official search cards. So I'll have to look into exactly what that could look like. You can also be featured on youtube.com/podcasts. For some reason, mine does not work. My link to that does not work for some reason. Yeah, no, it's not working. Let's see. youtube.com podcasts. Let's see if it's just a different. No, that search is broken, or that page is broken for some reason. We'll get back to that in another video. Let me know if you're experiencing the same thing. All right, we see some comments here. The only difference is that I do not see the podcast tab on my channel. I can only see it in the YouTube studio. Okay, interesting. Let's go to my channel and I'll look for you myself here. Yeah, I don't see it either. It might just take a little while. Let me see. Customize. I'm just kind of real quick into this. Yeah, I'd have to kind of play around, but I don't see it either at the moment, although I just turned on this feature. If it's one thing I've learned about YouTube, sometimes it takes a little while for something to kick in, right, that you think you have access to. So yeah, sound bath meditation online. It should hopefully show up there sometime soon, but sometimes it does take a little while to kick in. All right. Let me know though, when you see it, let me know. Just comment on any video on my channel and just like, hey Rob, that podcast tab showed up. Yeah, I'll check out your channel after this as well. Alicio, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, it's really good to know. Hey, good to see you, man. It's been a while. I have not live streamed in quite some time, so it's good to see people dropping by. All right. Yeah, let me know if you guys have the YouTube podcast feature up. It shows up, Sound Bath Meditation says, shows up on YouTube Music, but the episodes are still not playable. Again, it's probably just propagating. It's probably just like, sort of processing that into this new warehouse of content. So I don't know all the technicalities, obviously, but I feel like that's usually what happens with YouTube. It takes some time just to shift things over and activate different features once you have it, especially it's so new. And I'm sure that there's lots of people toying around with this. And so, I can only imagine a bunch of engineers inside of the YouTube factory trying to make it all work and give everybody a good user experience. All right. So going back to the features here, going back to their actual article about the podcast. So again, featured on youtube.com/podcast. That, for some reason, that page is not working for me for some reason. But we'll get back to that in another video, and I'll let you guys know when it works for me. Badges on your podcasts and videos, and your podcast will be available on YouTube Music users. Available to YouTube Music users. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to scroll down. This basically just covers how to set it up, and I showed you how to do that just earlier in this live stream. You can upload new videos. It's essentially the same, right? Essentially the same. You go to Content, Podcast, and then select your podcast and add your videos. Pretty straightforward. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You can remove your remove podcasting features from a playlist. You can do that if you want. I don't know why you wouldn't. Maybe you change your mind. You're like, hey, I don't want my actually don't want my podcast on YouTube. Then you can pull it back. Okay. You can also reorder the episodes within your podcast. Makes sense. Just like any playlist. Pretty straightforward. And you can measure your podcast performance. So that's really good. I'll probably go deeper into this in a future video. Probably go deeper into this in a future video just to actually look at the data. For me, data is very important. I think it should be important for you as well. If you're a content creator, really look into your data. It's kind of nerdy, right? But it's really important. Save you a lot of time. Actually, probably will help your channel grow. It's something that I've really tried to be better at, is looking at data. I really started when I used to work at TubeBuddy. many years ago. When I used to work at TubeBuddy, data was really important. That's really what TubeBuddy did. And then now more so as I matured into a more, seasoned marketer, seasoned content creator, data to me is very, very important. And so anytime I can get more data about certain things, about my content, about trends, about the audience, about the viewers and people that are consuming the content, listening to the content, I just soak that all in. It's very important. I think that'll help you as well. So I see some new people dropping in here. Good to see all of you. Really, this is a live stream that was meant to be quick, but really just to show you how to set up your YouTube podcast. I just got access to it earlier today. And so I just showed in this live stream how I set it up. It's all set up now. It's live. It doesn't show up on my YouTube channel, on the front-facing YouTube channel quite yet, but on the back end, it does show that I have the podcast tab now, and the podcast is public. It's live. There's 11 episodes in the podcast. If you want to go catch it, by all means, please go catch it. But really, that's what this is. If you have any questions, happy to answer them. Happy to look into it for you. If you're watching this on the replay, make sure that you ask your questions as well, because this podcast, as far as I can see, pretty happy with it so far. So good, pretty smooth. I'm gonna be a little patient and give it a few days for the podcast. First of all, like Soundbath Meditation Online mentioned, that for the podcast tab to show up on my channel, on my front-facing channel, I'm sure it'll show up here at some point. What I'm referring to is right here, is this tab right here, these tabs. So we got playlists, live stream, shorts, right? Videos, community, membership, all this stuff. I don't see podcast yet. So I'm sure either it's coming, it's on the way, it's on its way. All right, that's kind of what I'm thinking, the way it usually works. And then all the podcast episodes will be uploaded here. You can still catch it in the regular Spotify and Apple and Anchor and everywhere where Stitcher, all the traditional podcasting platforms and apps. But now it's going to be available on Andrew, good to see you, on YouTube. So hopefully it's going to be YouTube Music and all these things. So really cool feature. I'm really glad that didn't expect it, this feature to be live, but it's great. Andrew, good to see you, my man. I know you're like, what is Rob doing live streaming? I haven't live streamed in a while. So if you guys don't know, Andrew Ken, you guys gotta make sure you go follow him. If you're a content creator, if you're watching this, you make videos, make sure you go follow Andrew Ken. All right, make sure you follow. Hey, look at this guy. You can send me a super chat. Awesome, man. Good to see you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Andrew, we're gonna hang out, and I'm coming to your town next month, so hopefully you can make some time for me. Let's hang out. But yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that. Did not expect that today. So yeah, Andrew, make sure you go follow Andrew. He's amazing. All right, you learn so much. I learned a ton from Andrew. Just man, so good. All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for hanging out with me. Hopefully this was helpful for you in some way. Hopefully you have a podcast. You're thinking about launching a podcast. If you haven't already, if you have a podcast, I highly recommend it to take advantage of this new distribution channel for your content, for your podcast content. YouTube is a fantastic tool. It's the king when it comes to platforms for creators, right? In terms of discoverability, being discovered by your target audience. There's just so many viewers. People are watching YouTube, consuming YouTube. It's just such part of like everyday life now that if you're a content creator, you need to be on YouTube. But now if you're a podcaster, you don't just have to upload your video podcast and hope that people find it. YouTube is actually making space for your podcast so that it gets distributed through YouTube Music and all these other channels now that you have access to. It's free. You're already making your podcast episodes. You're already recording them. You're already editing them. You're taking the time to interview people if you have a show. And so take advantage of what YouTube is offering here, which is an additional stream, additional distribution channel, so that if you're doing any type of revenue, whether it's brand deals, sponsorships, anything like that, then you can say, hey, I'm reaching even more people with this podcast that you're sponsoring. Let's talk about my rates. Let's renegotiate my rates, because now I'm reaching even more people for you, Mr. Mrs. Brand rep. Or if you're just looking to grow your audience, it's a fantastic way to do that as well. All right. So there you have it. That's my little spiel on podcasts. I hope you jump into podcasting. I love it. It's a great way to connect with people and really get your message out there. So everybody, Soundbath Meditation Online, Eliseo, Andrew, Hey man, good to see you. Thanks for the super chat there. And yeah, hopefully I'll be live streaming again soon. But in the meantime, leave a comment, say hello, message me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.